There's the stereotype of women in their 50s and 60s are boring, that they are kind of maybe at home crocheting and nothing against crocheting, but, and pining for their kids. There's this irony in that in reaching reproductive infertility, we have actually reached the most fertile time in our lives in every other way. It's a counter to that whole narrative of decline. And you're realizing, oh, there are opportunities here. There are possibilities here for me to change and grow and become something more or different than I was. And that, in a way, to me, is the definition of youth. It's this idea that you are still becoming.
If you're a midlife woman, do you feel you're gaining power as you age, or are you in fact starting to feel more invisible? This is a subject I'm becoming more interested in as I journey through midlife. So I was grateful to be connected with today's guest, Sophia Raday, who set up her Instagram page, SheFlexx, to encourage women to, as she says, be more badass, and to be aware of the pervasive narrative in society that women in midlife and beyond should lower their expectations. We need more women like Sophia who give hope and inspire others to get out there and use their knowledge, experience and skills to represent the potential of the midlife plus woman. I love her empowering viewpoint and hope some of it rubs off on you too. As ever, do get in touch with either of us if you enjoy the episode and want to add to the conversation. Welcome, Sophia. So today we are going to be talking about aging, which is a topic that's talked a lot about in the press, and it's something that I know you are really passionate about having more positive messaging around. We connected through Dr. K, who's aging disgracefully, and I presume you know each other because of the American connection when she lives her part of the year in California.
Yes, and we're both writers.
Yeah, and you're both writers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is a lovely connection to be made. And yes, as you say, you're an author and you're writing busily at the moment, I believe. But I wanted to chat to you because you have a page called SheFlexx, which is exactly as it sounds. And you started this, I believe, because you started to realize that there needed to be some pushback in the messaging about aging, and particularly for women. So right. At what point did that kind of shift for you? Did you start to feel or notice, perhaps in your own life as well, that there was an issue around that?
Yeah, I think it was about 4 years ago. Well, my mom was ill and eventually died. And my mom was this extraordinary person who she was a refugee after the Second World War. She was in refugee camps from the time she was 11 till 16. Wow. But yet she still ended up getting a college education, becoming a physician, actually. So in the 50s, she was an MD, which was pretty rare. And then she was a cardiologist, and then she was a pharmaceutical executive. And she's just this brilliant, successful woman. And as she was ill with this, with cancer that eventually took her life, I would take her to a lot of doctor's appointments, and the doctors would talk to me. And I would always say, she's a physician, she's a cardiologist, and she knew everything. She knew everything they were talking about. And that kind of dismissal really made me furious. And so she was 85 at the time. And I even was beginning to see it a little bit in my own life. I was probably about 50, 56, 55. And I was working and I full time, and I could kind of see it a little bit sometimes in my work, a little bit of ageism. And so that was like the seed that started. And then when I was able to leave that full-time work, I wanted to start. I have had a Facebook presence for a long time that was really kind of about my writing, and it's hard to do. I find it's very hard to do social media around your own writing, because writing is very interior, and it's kind of, it becomes tiring to always be talking about yourself. And you can talk about books a little bit, but I was like, I want to come up with something that's a little more broad and more outward facing. And I started to think about women in their 50s and 60s, and how I really think we kind of stitch the world together. We take care of the elders often. We take care of our older kids. sometimes our grandkids, and we're kind of I just feel like we really do, like with communities, if you can get a woman in her 50s and 60s to help with whatever, or lead whatever community effort you have, then you're golden, right?
Yeah.
And so I felt like we just don't get enough credit for all the things we do. And so that's where the idea of SheFlexx, and it's two X's, SheFlexx with two X's for the ladies, came about. And I just wanted to really highlight not the power of this demographic. And as I started to research it, I was actually shocked by how much power this demographic has.
So you say power. In what sense do you mean power? Because because it could be a broad ranging term. So what do
Yeah,
you mean exactly? What were your findings?
right. Well, so on the one hand, there's this idea of us being invisible or becoming more invisible as we hit 50. And in some ways that's true, like in traditional media, TV, film, ads. Like in the US, we are fully 20% of the population, women 50 plus are 20%, which means 1 in 5 people in the United States is a woman 50 plus.
Oh, wow.
But on screen, we're represented 5% of the time. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast. And men over 50 are represented pretty much as much, like 4 to 5 times, like the same way that they are proportional in the population. We're the ones that are really underrepresented. So that's terrible. But on the other hand, we have this tremendous economic power. So it turns out that we control the buying decisions. I forget what the stat is, but billions and billions of dollars, the most of any demographic group in the U.S. And it doesn't mean that we actually, like, we're not the wealthiest, but because of the way families work, and that often women are choosing what car to buy or choosing what house to buy, we actually control this tremendous amount of economic power. And then there's other ways in which, we have a lot of political power and intellectual and creative power. And so I started to think about, maybe we don't so much have to change the world outside and the way people perceive us, so much as just recognize the power we actually have. And if we could just do that and flex that power, then we might change the world in that way. So that's the ambitious goal of SheFlexx.
Yeah, but it's a great goal, isn't it? Because you're so right. There is a lot of power to be had, but I think we're really underserved. And it's interesting, the sort of age group that you feel that shift happens, because it's around midlife. And we all know what happens around midlife for women. They tend to go through the menopause approximately around 50, 51. And that has, that could be seen as entering, the second chapter, full stop, whether length of that chapter, quality of chapter aside. But instead it's kind of talked about in really quite negative terms.
That's
as
right.
in, this is the beginning of your slide down the hill,
Right.
Physically, mentally, in every way, really. And obviously there's been a really big push recently, because I'm bang on that age. So I'm really aware of everything that's going on around. And I'm really pleased and empowered that there's been so much information in the last few years, so much more openness, but also so many people who are advocating exercise. We'll go on to talk about that, but exercise, wellness, but also just, treating yourself well and realizing that you are the important one. And you talked about us being the sort of glue, the in the sandwich, the middle part that really holds things together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that critical time in life where, you might often still have kids who are secondary school, or going into college, going to uni, at the same time as you have caring for parents, whilst also holding down a job and so on, and trying to do all the things. and it's hard because
Yeah.
there, you know, there is little time available, and there's this pervasive narrative that, you know, lower your expectations, madam.
Right. Right.
Which is all wrong.
Exactly. I mean, it's fascinating to me, the way that the doom and gloom around menopause and, say, empty nest, because, obviously it's a big, empty nest is a big milestone, and there is feelings around
Yeah.
it, strong feelings around it. I don't mean to, but for me, I will say, and I literally, no one in my life ever said to me, "Oh yeah, the empty nest is amazing." Everybody was doom and gloom. Even I mean, I don't know if I didn't ask them, but I love the empty nest.
Do you think that's because it's kind of like, oh, well, then, you know, you're doing a disservice. You don't, you know, love your kids enough or something like that.
I think there
I
is. I
mean,
think there is this
why?
nearly oppressive idea. So this is where all this comes from, is women as breeders, if you will. That's why at 50 you're no longer valued,
Makes
because
me think of
you're
chickens. I don't know why that just popped into my head. Just breeders.
um, and that, but the funny thing is, I've been working on this essay about empty nest and menopause, and how it affords us this freedom that we haven't had before. But I think there's a way in which the empty nest, along with menopause, where our hormones tend to change in a way that urge us less to be others focused and a little bit more self-care focused, as you were saying, that there's this irony in that, in reaching reproductive infertility, we have actually reached the most fertile time in our lives
Oh,
in every other way,
like that.
you know?
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it's felt for me. And now when I ask people who are empty nesters, they all kind of shyly say, "Yeah, yeah." It's this little, whispered network of like, "Yeah, it's great." I mean,
And actually, if you think about it, if your kids have left, yeah, they keep coming back because they're at college, so you know they're back for holidays. It's not like you don't
yeah,
see them for
right,
quite a few years, and often they don't leave for years and years because they can't afford their own homes. But
right.
would they really be looking back? Well, A, would they look back at all? Do they remember we exist once they've gone and they're having great fun? But would they look back and think, oh, I'm really pleased that my mum is, you know, pining for me and sad and not making the most of her? No,
I
never. They
don't think
really
so.
want, they would want your happiness. Of course they do. And they
Yeah,
want you to be able to live your life. I've
right.
certainly noticed, in it's not particularly to do with empty nesting, but coming to doing this work, which is kind of more public, um, in the last 5 years, how much my kids appreciate the fact that I am doing something, I'm trying to do good in the world, but I'm also doing something for myself. And
Hmm.
I know they really appreciate that. And a big part of the reason that I push myself out of my comfort zone to set something, I mean, I was never online, I was never on social media, I had never put a photograph of myself anywhere because I actually was quite like, I felt against it, but that was probably from fear. um so it was a huge shift for me. But yeah, I did it partly for them. I wanted to show them that mum, and sorry, bit more context. I have 3 boys, a husband, and a male cat. So there's boys, there's maleness everywhere.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I wanted them to see me as a working mum, as an entrepreneur, as someone who has a message and puts it out there. And that was as important to me as other goals of my own. Um,
Boy,
and
have you done that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, I think that's incredibly important. So it is, and I obviously didn't even think about the timing of the fact I was going to come towards menopause. Things were going to change. I had no idea what that was going to feel like. And then my eldest has now left, so
Hmm. Hmm.
off to uni. So it is that sort of middle stage. So it's particularly relevant. And so you talked about this underrepresentation in society, basically, but particularly the media. Is that
Yeah,
that was
like
kind of,
traditional media, film, TV. I got those stats from the Gina Davis, that has this media studies group, and they have a report about that.
yeah. And so what do you think the barriers are? Why are we, I mean, it's such a broad question because, you know, it's in business, it's everywhere. But given that we are, we've done the baby thing, if we were going to do babies, we're at a stage where we're potentially have more time, we've got much more experience. And, we are in those characters and so on. There's always a woman in the story of a certain age. So why do you think
Yeah.
there are barriers?
I mean, I think the big one is just a stereotype, of this notion that the time after, this kind of association of women with motherhood and youth, or maybe it's not just motherhood, but like courtship, motherhood, courtship, marriage, and motherhood, that this time isn't interesting, and that it is sort of a retiring time, which is the opposite of what I think it is. I think 50s and 60s, as I say, can be the most fertile time of your life. And for me, for example, we'll talk about that in a little bit, I've been able to get in the best shape of my life,
Yeah.
Which I think is the fuel, one of the best sources of fuel for us to really come to life in this era. But I think there's this, there's this stereotype of that women in their 50s and 60s are boring. There's a stereotype of that that they are kind of maybe at home crocheting, and nothing against crocheting, but and pining for their kids. And it's so neat for me to see the counter narrative on social media in particular. I mean, sometimes social media has its downsides for sure, but I do love this aspect of it. It is the place where I see almost a revolution in terms of this expression of, and I think it's starting to affect, there's a lot more talk about menopause than there used to be publicly. There's this movie that just came out about menopause. There's, I think, there's more older women filmmakers getting their work, not enough, but getting their work out with older women characters. Nomadland is a great example of that. And so it's, I think, slowly starting to change. But of course, like everything else, when you have people in power that maybe aren't women of our age, it's hard. It's slow.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right there. And that's beyond 50, 60. That's what I love to see. I think even in the time that I've been on social media, I more regularly see these incredibly empowering symbols of people in their 70s, 80s, 90s,
Yes.
who are not just, they've not been big athletes all their lives, and, they've just managed on a continuation. But they've started really into those more further decades from nothing, and realized, whoa, you can feel so good. The more you move, the stronger you get, the more you feel like you can take on the world. And obviously my sort of specialist area is movement, not as opposed to exercise, but as a way of accessing exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the more you can lean into movement, move more in a sense to celebrate what your body can do at any age, the more that opens doors to other types of movements and activities and fun and so on. And one of the things that I really love about your page particularly is the humor, but B, the dancing. There's lots of dance in there. And has that always been a factor in your life?
No. Oh my gosh. I think you could probably tell that. So it was the pandemic. I guess I discovered, I started to work out at home primarily. And I just discovered these dance videos on YouTube, these dance exercise videos. And I was like, these are fun. And I was also reading at that point about novelty, the importance of novelty in everything. I'm very influenced by this woman, Marion Diamond, who's the person who discovered essentially the plasticity of the brain. And then there's a movie out about her, and she talks about novelty as essentially the most important thing. And it's also obviously very important for physical exercise to do different movements. Yes. And that hadn't been really, the way I had exercised. I'd always been something of an athlete or an outdoors person, not yeah, and when I had kids, it was curtailed. But I was sort of like, get on the strider for a while, warm up, maybe lift a few weights, stretch.
Yeah.
But when I
Done.
started dancing, it was like, oh my God, this is okay. It's really hard. That was one thing. It was really hard for me. I had never been a dancer. Um, and yet I could still get better if I kept at it. But it was so fun. Like I can't tell people who, hate exercise. I always try to tell them to do this because it's so fun. Turn on your music for 5 minutes in the kitchen and
Yeah.
just dance around.
And so the connection, so like to delve a bit more into what fun means in that sense, how did you was it the feeling from within your body,
Yeah.
from connecting with the music, the emotion and being able to express that emotion? What kind of level does it take you to?
Well, I think that, a little bit that, but also just the fact that when you're dancing as exercise, for me anyway, I have to concentrate because I'm not used to doing these kinds of moves, the footwork or just trying to, get my body to move in certain ways. And so consequently, everything else is out of my mind.
Yeah.
All the other things I'm worried about, the state of the world or my kids or whatever, it's out. I have a break from all that. And I'm just feeling my own body. And it's usually, I get this sense of, I, I get this sense of power from it and competence, even though I'm not saying I'm a terrible dancer, but I am getting better. So the fact that I can master things or at least get closer to it is very empowering. And I have this whole feeling that like, this is why I think exercise is the fuel to really being our best selves in our 50s and beyond, is that when you exercise and you feel the power of your body and you realize that you can become stronger or fitter or more, what's the word, where you're more agile,
Yeah.
suddenly it's a counter to that whole narrative of decline.
Yeah.
And you're realizing, oh, there are opportunities here, there are possibilities here for me to change and grow and become something more or different than I was. And that, in a way, to me, is the definition of youth. It's this idea that you are still
Yeah.
becoming.
Everything's possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I feel like that every time I dance and do exercise, I get back in touch with that
Yeah.
sense of possibility.
I couldn't agree more. I love dancing. I don't get enough opportunity to dance. I'm trying to create some more opportunities to dance other than just in my kitchen. And for my 50th, one of both of the two sort of celebrations I had involved a lot of dancing to the music that I love to dance to. And it's such a different experience, I think, as well, when you are in midlife, because you do care less about what people think, and you
Yeah.
do connect more with just how good it feels. And I think of many exercise forms, of all the sort of traditional ones that you would automatically think of, it is the one where you do it your own way. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to feel good for it to flow. So you really have to tune into how it feels and what it does for your brain, your body, everything. As you say, you're completely in the moment, concentrating, really absorbing the music. And as a result, you move in a much more natural way.
Mm,
You express how you're feeling or whatever you need to get out or whatever it is through the movement of your body. And I think
yeah.
as adults, we lose that connection with being able to do that. So, kids will just naturally run around and play and they will do things with their body that feel fantastic.
Right.
And they're not even thinking about the connection at all. And when we're older, I think we sort of dissect everything a little bit too much and we get too controlled by the messaging of you need to move in this way to build that, to
Right.
make sure, and I talk about it in my messaging too, about because it is the common narrative about being more mobile, agile, as you said, having ease and fluidity in your movement. But to train that, to be able to maintain it, is the best way is to move naturally. And dancing, it's been around for millennia. does just that. It really, really connects you. So, yeah, I'm going to be following your lead. I'm not sure how much I'll be posting on social media, but I will probably as I gain in confidence as I grow, then I will. And I love the fact that you do, because, you know, it's enabling and empowering other people to do that. And I've seen some really great different sort of dance modalities that are coming out. Where the class is completely varied in the background. The music's entirely different, and it's all about just fun. And some people of midlife or older generations trying some of the dance moves, being
Yes.
taught them by younger,
Yes.
which is just fantastic. So who in the sort of just to name some names, because it's always useful, can you remember any YouTube inspirers
Oh,
or
yeah.
anyone that people could go and search for to just start having a go?
Absolutely. I absolutely love this young lady, Emily Thorne. She goes by MEMKEM, the letter K, Fit. And she has fantastic, it's on YouTube, but she's on Instagram, but her
The long
videos are on
form.
YouTube. Yeah. Yeah. And if, you know, so there's ads, unless you pay like a Patreon thing, then you can get ad free stuff. But it's so, in my opinion, so worth it. Her stuff is so fun. And she's
Great.
coming out with new stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So she's my absolute favorite.
Oh, brilliant. That's a brilliant place to start. So, so tell me as well about the process that you've been. So you say that you trained before, but
Right.
now you are feeling more empowered, and you post things about your being at the gym around quite different people to yourself, feeling happy to be that, and talk about being in your best shape. Because the reason I wanted to talk about this is because there is also, there's the sort of more negative messaging, but we have to be honest about it, about loss of bone mass,
Right.
bone density, muscle mass as we age, and that is a real thing, and we need to be helping ourselves. And a lot of people kind of feel a little bit perilous, and wonder if that is even a possibility. And yet you're saying that in the last short while, I don't know how long, you've got to the point where you feel you're in the best shape of your life. So tell me about how you've achieved that, and how that makes you feel.
Right. So, you know, the breakthrough for me, I had some kind of like posture organization of my body problem. I think it all stems back to, like, I was 5'7" when I was 11. I was very tall, skinny, lanky, and I was very shy. And so I hunched. I tried to hide myself. And, you know, so this is an era when people, you weren't taught as a young girl how to deal with male attention. You were always supposed to be nice. And it was very difficult. So I kind of hid I was a pretty child, and I got a lot of men's attention and had no idea how to deal with it except to hide. And I think I get a sense the younger women nowadays, they're a little more equipped on how to repel those advances. At least I hope they are. But so I have this kind of like my upper thoracic spine is kind of like I hunch. I have this kyphosis, and I have seen so many people, and they all had ideas, physical therapists, whatever. I found a trainer who she fixed it. I mean, it's still a work in progress, but
Hmm.
I found an incredible trainer. She's a CrossFit trainer. So sometimes I think it's really helpful to have a trainer, but they have to, you know what they're doing. And so we're still working on that. But I think dealing with that, because there were ways which I just couldn't, like I finally got in a pull up, but it was hard to do without connecting certain core, using the back in ways that I just didn't understand. I didn't know how to use my body that way. So that's enabled me to get a lot stronger and do things I couldn't do before. And then, I mean, I have part of it, and I hope, you know, not everybody, of course, I have to acknowledge the tremendous privilege in my life. I was able to stop full-time work and go back to my writing life and have time, and my kids, I have an empty nest at this point. So I have more time to work out than I guess I could have had this time like in college, but I didn't have the mindset. So it's a combination of time, trainer, and then
choosing to fill that time with things that are nurturing you, that make you feel good,
yeah,
and
yeah,
unashamedly, because
yeah,
you know we've got to look after ourselves, and yes, we have got the stats can be tricky in terms of the fact that things in our body do not necessarily go the way we want them to. But we
right,
have, and again, this is around the narrative, we have the power to make change if we really want to. And, that doesn't have to be through joining a gym. That doesn't have to be through expensive means.
right,
And it can be around um, doing what we're doing anyway. Even if we are doing that, it does come down to that choice. And if you have that driver, and if you want to feel better, then you know we can all make changes. And it doesn't mean necessarily you potentially get into the best shape of your life, but at the same time we can really feel good and feel stronger and feel more capable to then go on and do other things. And I know you're quite a keen adventurer, so you like to go out kayaking and trying new things physically
mm-hmm,
in that way. But there's
yeah,
a lot of women of this stage of life who are fearful of that. And a
right,
part of that fear from the clients that I work with comes from having a lack of confidence in their bodies, in what their
right,
bodies are capable of. And it's so important to recognize that actually just doing it doesn't have to be, lifting really heavy or doing pull-ups or whatever.
right.
And hats off to you. That is amazing. It doesn't have to be that. It can be down to just feeling like you have the confidence in your movement in a better way by slowly working on that, that can
Totally agree.
take you in the right direction, so that then you start to think, well, rather than thinking, actually, I'm a bit scared of going on a kayak, so I'll let them do that and I'll stand and watch and applaud them. You get enough confidence built up to think, no, I'm going to give it a try, and why not?
Yes, exactly, exactly. And one of the reasons I think I've been able to um, get more into working out, and now is that I used to do it to look a certain way more than anything. Now I don't, I hardly care about that. Like, I think my legs are getting a little bigger, and that, that makes me happy, but it's sort of a side effect. Well, the reason I do it every day is like, if I don't do it, I'm not as happy, and my body doesn't
Yeah,
feel as good. So it's about
yeah.
this internal motivation, um, and anything external is kind of a gravy. Um, so I think that that's another nice thing about this age, is if we can embrace that approach to movement of it's for me. It's not to, meet some kind of society's expectations of how I should look. We're all beautiful at this age, as far as I'm concerned. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, and then I think you do, as you even get out and walk, or try movements that feel accessible and try new things, you gain confidence, and that then the world starts to open up little by little.
So do you set yourself goals?
Well, yeah, I set myself the goal of the pull up, for
Yeah.
example. Um, but I have been like, I kind of just let it flow. I follow a lot of fitness people and mobility people on Instagram. So like, I was very into kind of basic CrossFit stuff, which is push-ups, pull-ups, like deadlifts, heavy, kind of certain, plus the dance. And now I've gotten into this like body weight mobility stuff. So like, um, I just put up the thing about the side monkey, but like these moves. So I try to change what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and these body weight moves, really, like, you can't quite do them if you haven't organized your body correctly. So you have to and what I'm learning more about right now is just like the way that your core, all the aspects of the part around your midsection connect and work to make things accessible to you. So now I'm just kind of playing with that.
Yeah, there's a real thing about the core being like, work your core, but actually if you're doing the right sort of movements that are more natural, your core is involved the entire time because it's supporting it is the join between the top and the bottom. And ultimately, if that's not stable, then you're not stable, and so on. So actually
Yeah.
letting the body organize itself through natural patterns will mean that you get a strong core.
Yeah.
And instead of the aesthetic of perhaps younger, getting the flat tummy look and thinking
Right.
that the core is literally the front, and it's far from it. It's the entire way around.
Yeah.
And its key job is obviously supporting that spine that's so mobile. So yeah, there's an awful lot of messaging and narrative that is a bit off when it comes to what we should work. But in my
Hmm.
opinion, in my humble opinion.
No, I agree. I agree.
So with your SheFlexx page, you're trying to change the narrative. In what other ways do you see people trying to do that? And what ways can people who listen, particularly who perhaps might not see themselves as sort of activists or putting messages out there, but in their own communities, and how can people start to make changes to really start to believe in that potential in their future rather than listening to the noise?
Right. Well, that's why I think the first thing is to move.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're incorporating movement and movement, for yourself. And then I think that, like I say, is the fuel to really kind of blossoming in these midlife years, and it'll point you in whatever direction you feel like you want to do. You'll suddenly like, well, maybe I do want to lead that project, or maybe I do want to try this new thing. Maybe I want to try jump roping, or I want to try kayaking, as you said. Um, I really think that is a great place to start, because it's going to help you obviously health wise anyway, and help your longevity. And so I think that's a great way to start. I am really curious to hear from women, like what are the things that they would like more help, information, inspiration about. So I'm always trying to gather that and then try to address it on my page. So I'm very open to that. Um, so I think,
And then also your creativity, because obviously, so you say you've gone back to your writing.
yeah,
So so you had a break from it for a while, and now you're allowing yourself to have that time to do that and go into a part of you that presumably you really, really enjoy, which is another aspect.
yes, yeah, and also it's so I'm writing a mystery, my first mystery. I did a memoir was published like 15 years ago about my, at that time, red state blue state marriage, um, and then I've written a bunch of articles, and I wrote a YA novel, but it's in a drawer. And now I'm writing this mystery, and it's about, the main characters are these two 50-something, late 50s, badass, sexy, dynamic women, cops, and they have to solve this. They have to solve this mystery. But it's writing is terrifying to me, because well, it's a very competitive. It's similar to, like, you have to realize that you're doing the writing for yourself. There's
Yeah.
been a lot of there's been a lot of ways, and I'm just trying to unpack this now, and maybe send this message out to folks through Instagram. But there's been a lot of parallels between my ability to become more fit and be very consistent with my fitness, and other goals. Like for me, writing, like I realized that I have to bring that exact same, you just do it 5 days a week for an hour and a half or 2 hours. You just do it. You just do it. You just do it. And every day it's going to feel like nothing happened. But then after a year,
Yeah.
or even 6 months, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, look how much I've done. And
Yeah.
that used to be a real problem for me, because I didn't have enough grit with my writing. I would despair, and not go on, or take breaks while I talk myself off a ledge. But so
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think when you move less, then well, ultimately you're moving your gray matter less by doing that, because you're just not, on the basic physiological level, you're just not giving it the blood flow, the nutrients, the oxygen in the same way. And I
Yeah.
find that if I set my day up with movement of some kind, whether it's a walk, whether I'm doing some weights, whether I'm doing some natural movement training, whatever the thing is, if I do that early on, then my day is entirely different. And that doesn't come necessarily from the physical side. It's much more about my brain. My
Yeah.
brain is more ready to sort of attack the day, and I just feel more positive about my outlook on everything for the day, and therefore it sets it up well.
And
And
there's
I
all
think,
kinds of research about this,
yeah,
like the hope
hope
molecule.
molecules.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Which is so true, and you can
I
feel
feel
it.
it.
You
I feel it.
literally feel it. Yeah, as soon and you know what I would advocate is try to find the thing that makes you feel that during it. So it's not just a case of push to the end and not really enjoying it so much and be relieved that you finished it and then feel better just because you've done it. Because why spend your time doing that? Why not do the thing that you're either fall in love with, the thing that you've chosen to do, or find the thing? And that's why the dance example is so good,
Yeah.
because that is a body weight move. You're absolutely strengthening. There's wonderful impact through doing that. You are creating lots of, I talk about shapes. You're creating a
Yes.
whole variety of shapes that you won't do if you then go and, like you're talking about, sitting and writing. You can't be wandering around writing. You have to sit. So, and all the jobs that entail sitting as well. So creating all these wonderful shapes, but as you say, also just having a moment in the day that's just all about you,
Yeah.
and saying that's okay, giving yourself permission to do that, and then coming out feeling so much better. It's like the saying about put your oxygen mask on first, and for me, that's certainly comes from movement, because then you can give and share and help others because you've served your own needs, and therefore you're more available,
Right.
in a way.
Right. Yeah. And I have become such that I think I heard it on your podcast, actually, that it takes like 3 weeks before you start to really, uh, before you start to really have a habit of it. But I now, before it becomes easy to, I don't know. For me, it's like I just really don't want to miss my workout. I don't want to miss my workout because I know, um, I just know that I will not be as happy. I will not be
As
as
nice a person
as
to
nice a
others.
person. I will not
Yeah,
be I
yeah,
will not be as creative. I will not be as, just so there's so many ways in which it supports me.
yeah. So for anyone who is listening to this, feeling inspired and thinking, yeah, I need a bit of that, but I don't know where to start. I mean, obviously, go and have a dance would be a top tip. But in terms of um, the way that we look at life and the messaging that's coming in at us, what would your advice be to help people shift away from that, or at the very least be aware of what it's potentially doing to them?
I mean, there is so much BS. It is so much BS. That's all. And I guess maybe to say that a lot of these kinds of things, these messages, there's some kind of talk about power. That's like I'd kind of do women's fitness for older women through the lens of power. Um, it's a there's something political going on. There's a way in which um, the powers that be are making money off of your worries about aging, your um, and some of them are, certainly the cosmetic stuff is not necessarily anything you have to worry about at all. We have to. I always say we have to separate age and beauty. There's beauty at all ages.
Mm.
It's not like there's only beauty at certain ages, at the younger ages. There's beauty at all ages. And if you start to train yourself, you'll see it. But society's not helping us with that, but we can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
um, I lost my train of thought. Society's messages. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do with my account. If you want regular messages or reminders that it's all BS. Oh, and then some of the medical stuff is real, but you also, in my opinion, have to be careful about it because people are making money off your fears of osteopenia, which is sort of a made up term. Osteoporosis is real, but people are making money off of your worries about it. And there might be, certainly exercise is one of the very best ways to forestall that, as opposed to maybe pharmaceuticals. I mean, that's an individual question with your doctor, but I think, awareness, connect with like-minded women.
I was going to say community, because, you know, as you've said, and I've said, the amount of people that we have seen, and I connect with those people, like yourself, like Kay, like there's so many women who have the undertone of everything they're doing is the same message. It's trying to empower women of a similar age to feel that they can, to try, just to sort of inch forward with that. I know you're good friends with Caroline Poole as well, and she's done some amazing, crazy things. But having that in your life is also a really incredible support and encouragement system. So surrounding yourself with like-minded people, or people that almost you want to be like, is can only do you good and encourage you, and I suppose.
Yeah, I have these little cards for SheFlexx, these little actual business cards, and they say, "You look like a badass," and I just hand them out to older women with the idea that they can then pass it on to some other badass. In this way of which we're just, and badass is in the eye of the beholder, but we're just so that, like, hey, I see you, I see that you're not invisible to me. I see you, and now I see, very cool women all around me all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Now that you're actually doing the giving, particularly. Yeah, no, I love that. That's a wonderful thing to do. It's a great little nod, and they will feel wonderful for that as well, because perhaps no one's ever said anything like that to them, or perhaps it's what they need right now. And that's a lovely thing. Thank you so much for your time, Sophia. It's been really, really interesting chatting with you. I love what you're doing. So just remind people of your Instagram handle so they can go and follow you if they like what you're doing.
Yeah, it's so the account is called SheFlexx, SheFlexx, but my handle is actually SheFlexxer. So at SheFlexxer.
And that will all be linked in the show notes as well. So you can come and find your work, and obviously your book, hopefully, when it comes out.
That's in process, but I will, in my stories and such, I update folks on what's happening with that.
Yeah, well, really good luck with that as well, because it sounds like a great story. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed listening, and if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.